We have some very interesting stuff happening right now around Twilight Masquerade and specifically the Greninja. Now, there's a lot of hype about Surging Sparks, Prismatic Evolutions, all the new sets that are coming out, the Team Rocket set in the future, all of this stuff, and I feel like this is kind of slipping into the background a little bit. The Greninja just hit a very interesting point. This card just had a few $400 sales, and the booster boxes are now at over $200. And I think we need to talk about this. While if you look at this on the 3 month chart, it's only up 11%, which isn't crazy numbers, but you can see, back here it was a $318 card and it slowly shot up. They got market at 370, but this is the interesting part. Most recent sales at 418, 400, 400. You got a few in the threes, and then 448, 340, 480, 450. So multiple confirmed sales in the $400 mark for the Greninja. Also, if you scroll down to lowest listeds, these are the lowest listeds for English copies. You're already in the 400s. If you want to go buy a starred seller, you're at $450 already. And then it goes up pretty quickly, closer to around 500, which is very interesting. And I'm going to tell you guys why. We're going to break that down more towards the back half. But quantity is not that much available, kind of a low supply. 32 copies available. And if we do a little zoom out right here, you can see on the 1 year chart, this card has pretty much only gone up over time. Obviously, there's been, it came down off of release, then up, then down, then up, but it's stair-stepped its way all the way up, right? And the biggest lull right here was when it almost cracked 300 in August. It came all the way back down to 260, but then it shot up, cracked 300, and now we're seeing $400 sales on the Greninja. If we go over to PSA 10 sales on eBay, we're seeing in the 800 range, 800 to 850, pretty consistent, see all these 799 sales. So pretty solidly, a few down here in the 730s, but pretty consistent an $800 PSA 10. So very consistent sales, right? Slow and steady growth on the raw copies. Then when you talk about what's the pop report look like, it is easier to grade. You got 7,800 being graded with 4,300 tens. So the gem rate being pretty good, 2,900 nines. So keep that in mind. Also, sometimes I feel like these numbers are skewed a little bit when you're talking about PSA, because, you're only going to send the cards that you think have a good chance, right? So it's not 4,000 out of all of the cards. It's 4,000 out of the ones that looked good. So a little bit of a skew on the gem rate. So keep that in mind. So the card is looking really good. We're going to talk about the set in a second. But first, we need to talk about today's sponsor, which is PokeNotify. PokeNotify, if you're not familiar, is a notification service and a Discord community where you can get notifications on Pokemon restocks. And right now, it's really hard to get any product. And you can get notifications from Pokemon Center, Best Buy, Target, Walmart, anywhere that Pokemon stocks product, you can get a notification sent straight to your phone so you can actually have a chance to get some of this product. And you don't have to believe me if it works. They have tons of reviews. They have a whole section dedicated, a whole success channel on the server. It is free to try for 3 days. And then after that, it's $8 a month. I do have a discount code in the description, and there's a link for you to join if you're interested in trying it out. Live notifications for TCG drops and restocks for 100 plus websites globally, all over the world, not just not just US retailers as well. So they got a buy, sell, trade. It's a whole community in there. So if you want to check out PokeNotify, obviously reviews, tons of people in there. It's a great little tool. It just helped me with the Pokemon Center. I was able to finally get the Journey Together ETBs that dropped. So it's a great service and a very handy tool, especially in today's market. But let's get back to Twilight Masquerade. So the other thing that's happening with Twilight Masquerade is the booster boxes. The booster boxes we're seeing hit over $200. And, in the past 3 months, it's up 27%. 3 months ago, this was sub MSRP in the 150s. Then it sold out on the Pokemon Center, and it ran up to 190, which is usually to be seen after a box sells out on the Pokemon Center. You do see it run, and then it kind of cooled off in January. It came back down to 178, the 170s, and now we're seeing it finally eclipse that $200 mark. So if we zoom out right here on the 1 year chart, you can see obviously we're at the all-time high for the booster box, up 53% off of pre-release pricing. Pre-release pricing usually high. It cooled off down to $105 a box, but Twilight Masquerade on the move all across the board. You can see lowest listed is going to be in the 205 range, and then it gets up, not that many boxes or not that many sellers, and then we're at 220 a box. So the boxes are doing well. The chase card's doing extremely well. We also have cards like the Eevee, which, are enough to, it's not the chase card of the set, but it's enough to provide a nice secondary card that people will not be mad if they pull. So it brings a lot of value to the box, right? Because I do feel like maybe as a whole, the set is a little, I've never been too hot on the set as a whole, but you have enough there, right? We've learned that, given enough time, we've learned that these boxes don't always need to be like a banger set all the way through. One chase card will do it, especially, and if you throw in a second or third, that helps a lot, and people will want to rip the boxes. And Prismatic Evolution's bringing a lot of EV hype recently. The EV card's up 67%. Illustration rare, went from $50. It did hit the $100 mark. It cracked that, but it has kind of came off of that mark. We're seeing in the 90s. But last sold's coming back up potentially because we have a 116, 113. There's an 84, an 85, 116, 120, and 117. And then a few more in the 80s and 90s. So sales are a little bit all over the place on the Eevee, so we'll have to see where it ends up. There's a lot available right now, 142 copies. So I think that's playing a factor, a high supply. Lowest listed from a starred sellers around 86 with shipping. So that would indicate that it's probably coming back down. Even if it settles in the 80s, that's still a really good price increase over where we were at before back here in the 50s. You can see if we zoom out, pretty good growth on the 1 year chart, 275%. Back here, pre-release prices was a $25 card. Then it shot up to 60 and kind of came down and cooled off for a while, 40s and 50s before going on its current run. Then you have other cards like the Perrin. Now this is a special illustration rare that pairs with another card from the set. You can see the Growlithe, the Hisuian Growlithe in the lens. Now this one's up 37% in the past 3 months. This was a $60 card back here, cooled off a little bit down to 56, and now we're seeing $83. Lower-ish supply, for around 41 copies available, so not as many as the Eevee. You can see fairly consistent sales. You got 90s, upper 80s. You do have a few lower price sales, 79 in the 80s as well. But the Perrin looking really well. We can zoom out right here. You can see it's kind of just barely above its pre-release pricing. It was kind of on a free fall from about July, $80. It free fell all the way down to 55, and now it's shooting back up. So just kind of getting back to where it was. You can see lowest listed from a started sellers around 83, which is right at market price on the Perrin. You also have the Carmine, which is a big popular trainer card. I'm not really a trainer collector, but this is a nice looking card, obviously, like with the lights and you got the food and whatever. The waifu guy is going to do the waifu stuff. It's not really for me, but it is a nice looking card. It's up 21% just in the past 3 months, going from 60 up to around 70s. If we zoom out right here, you can see this card, once again, free falling off. It was as high as 126, and that was in May, late May, early June. This card just fell off. Looks like 65 has been the low. So it's just now seeing a bounce back. It's 22% in the past month. So, it finally hit that bottom. Apparently the market said no more. Lowest listed from starred sellers right around 80, which is just a tinge above current market price. So you got the Carmine. Even if it fell all that way, it's still holding, a $70 card. So that's nice to see. Then you have the Blood Moon Ursaluna, which I do think is a fun card. I do like this one. It's not doing very well right now. It's kind of down, or flat. You can call it flat. It's only down 1% over the past 3 months. It was at $42 before. It came down all the way to 37, and now it's back up to just under 40. Now there's a lot of copies available of this guy, 124. So there's a big supply. Last sold's pretty consistently around 40. We're just going to call it 40 for the sake of this video. Lowest listed from a starred seller, ding, 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 40 bucks, 39.99. So nothing crazy there. Obviously if you're opening this set, you're wanting the Greninja. That's a no-brainer. But I wouldn't be frustrated if I pulled this as a special illustration rare, because it is a nice looking card, and I do think it's a fun card with all the Pokemon in the background. Then you have the Chansey. We've talked about this one recently. Very nice illustration rare from the set. You got all the Pokemon in the background: Snorlax, Ditto, Bellsprout, Psyduck here. It's up really big still, 216%. You can see, it was a sub $10 card 3 months ago. It shot up to 30, and a lot of the times when we see explosive growth, we've seen it on pretty much every big card that it happens to. They got to cool off and retrace at least a little bit, and it did come down just to around 25, and it's popped back up just a little, right? Just around 26. Now you can see 20 sales as high, and then as high as in the 30s, but fairly consistent around that $25, $26 mark. Now, talk about supply. This one does have a lot, 194 copies available. If you want to go lowest listed from a starred seller, you're right at 24 and 25, which is just a tinge below market price currently. If we zoom out on the 1 year, you can see this did run up a little bit after release, went from 12 up to 20, and then came back down to that. So we're coming off of the all-time low to the all-time high, just off of that all-time high recently for the Chansey. Then there's the Growlithe that I was talking about. This is the one that pairs with the Perrin. Pairs with the Perrin. It's up 160% in the past 3 months, and I thought this was a very fun card. We talked about this one recently as well, but I think it's the reason that I'm bringing some of these cards up is I think it gives you a better feel for the set as a whole, because I do think that that's important when we're talking about Twilight Masquerade. We're talking about the booster boxes. Okay, we're talking about investing potentially in this set. As a dog owner, I like this with the Growlithe just looking up, got its little paws on Perrin taking the photo. So 160% growth, went from around an $8 card up into the 20s. Over 100 copies available on this one. And last solds, we're going to see 22, 17, and then in the teens. So this one potentially coming down. If we go to lowest listed from a starred seller, you're at around 20, which is just a little bit below market. So most likely this card's going to come down a little bit off of this explosive growth, which kind of would be to be expected. But it is a nice card. Once again, this is a nice illustration rare. I think, between you got the Eevee, the Chansey, and the Growlithe, I think that's a solid, really solid 3 illustration rares. But obviously up big on the 1 year chart, almost 240%. On release, this was a $6 card, shot up to 13, and then it kind of fell off. Down to 6 was the low, and from 6, it's climbed, and then saw the explosive growth more recently, right? So you take a look at that. Then you start to look at the set. There's a few other cards that do stand out to me in this set, right? I'm not a big mask. I don't really like the masks too much. They don't really do a ton for me. So I kind of ignore those ones. If you like them, you like them. I do think that the Infernape card is another nice illustration rare. I wouldn't be mad if I pulled that. And then the Pinsir. I do like the Pinsir as well. You have some other cool art-wise, like the Frostlass is cool looking. The Fion is cool. So yeah, that's what you have as a set, right? Overall, the set looking pretty solid. There was a point in time where I didn't like Twilight Masquerade. I really didn't. And from the collector side of me, still, there's not like a crazy amount that draws me towards Twilight. But you can't deny what you're seeing with the Greninja. That's mostly what this video is about, is the Greninja cracking 400, the booster box cracking 200, and you start to think like, where can the Greninja go specifically? And then where can the booster boxes go, right? Now, this is what's happening with the Bubble Mew right now. You can see market price on the Bubble Mew is 400. You can see the most recent sales, high 300s, 390, 395, 395, 395, 395, 400, 396. So we're going to call this just sub 400 on the Bubble Mew. So that would mean that you would have, if these prices hold, right? So they do have to hold. You got 32 copies available of the Greninja, where there's 99 of the Bubble Mew, right? So in theory, these $400 recent sales are probably going to hold. There's less supply on the Greninja, and the Greninja is going to surpass the Bubble Mew, right? Then obviously you have your new Umbreon card. That's the most expensive of the era, but the Greninja's looking like it wants to take its place back as number two. So we jump over to even the Pikachu from Surging, and now you have the Greninja potentially being in striking distance of surpassing the Pikachu. And once again, if you want to look at quantity, which I do think is important, there's 77 copies available of the Pikachu from Surging Sparks. So you compared to 32 of the Greninja, right? So I do think that there is a chance for the Greninja to continue to run, potentially, and surpass the Pikachu. While dollar wise, it does have to jump up around 50, $60 off of the last solds. It definitely seems possible. So that would be an interesting shakeup. The Pikachu, honestly, has kind of, once it shot up off of release, it's kind of held fairly steady. Maybe slight decline, but it's held real good to that like mid to upperish $400 mark. So it's held strong for a while, but there's having a lot of quantity available right now currently. Lowest listed for starred sellers is around 450, just a little bit under market price. And the most recent sales very consistent in that mid to upper $400 range. You do have one as high as 505, but mostly in the mid 400s on the Pikachu. So my question to you guys is, do you think the Greninja is going to surpass, I mean, it's technically right there surpassing the Bubble Mew currently, will it pass the Pikachu, and will we see it take the number 2 place back? The growth on this card, once again, just to go back to reiterate back to this card, has been just stair stepping its way up over time, slowly. So yeah, that's what today's video was about. I did think that the Greninja was a very interesting card, a very popular Pokemon. But the booster box is starting to look a little bit different now. I think in the perspective of, and this happens all the time. We've talked about it on the channel many times. Your perspective of a set, right, can and will change based on the value of the cards within it, right? Because like I said, I wasn't hot on this set, but now, you have, like I said, your Eevee, your Chansey, and your Growlithe starting to get up there in value a little bit more, changes to illustration rares. I always liked those cards before, but, I'm guilty of the price changing my view, right? It just happened. So from an investing standpoint, like where can Twilight Masquerade go? The booster boxes, they're already at 200, right? We've seen what Surging Sparks boxes have done. And Prismatic obviously doesn't have a booster box, but you got Surging booster boxes at $250. The next thing is, can and will Twilight Masquerade, can it get to $250 a box? Will it surpass it? Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. It would be interesting to see. I think that Greninja carries more weight than we realize. So I think it's an iconic card, and it was the set that Twilight was the set that changed my view on modern Pokemon investing, specifically the Scarlet and Violet era. It didn't change how I viewed Sword and Shield. That's kind of its own thing. But it literally gave us our first expensive chase card of the era. It gave us our first booster box that was actually gaining value quickly. So it's I think Twilight potentially is I don't think it's like a sleeper set. I'm not trying to say that, but I feel like it still has some room to run, and potentially when these things all shake out, by the time it's all said and done, Twilight Masquerade might be up there quite a bit on the investability scale, on the booster box scale, and potentially on the chase card scale, because we have a lot of sets coming out with a lot of crazy cards. With the Rocket set having a Mewtwo, in theory should have a Mewtwo. They teased a Mewtwo. We should be getting a Mewtwo. And then that Ho-Oh card, I don't think that one's going to be one to dethrone But you know, it's a battle for second place for the chase cards because I don't think the Umbreon's going anywhere. So it's just a very interesting time with the Greninja and the set. But yeah, I just wanted to talk about that. I do think it's important. I do think it's relevant, and it's a set that I feel like doesn't get a lot of attention right now. It's just a little overshadowed by the prismatics, by the 151, by surging, maybe, or maybe I'm in a specific bubble that just hasn't seen it talked about enough. So, anyways, shout out to Twilight Masquerade. Um, yeah, so it's the underdog story. I feel because yeah, like I said, I dunked on that set when it first came out. I didn't like that set, so and nobody I don't think anybody thought I was going to do what it was going to do. Nobody called that to that level. If somebody did, I don't think they called it that it was going to be this successful. So I do think it's a very interesting set. But that's all I got for this one, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you guys in the next one. And remember, it was never phase.